1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Welcome back to the TMCJ podcast. We are on episode 81, which still kind of throws me off because I felt like 81 should have been last week. But of course, we're in this bi-weekly format now, so that's not happening.
I felt you were trying to work out something clever about number 81.
It's 9 times 9. Does that help?
Ooh, that's nice. I like that.
A little bit of multiplication there.
Dude, I love a good square number.
Yeah, exactly. Square root it. But yeah, so this podcast, we've mostly got games to talk about because in the past 2 weeks, Blue and I have both been playing actually just independent, like
random games.
Random single player
awful,
games.
And we're not going to talk about them.
Well, the two that I've been playing in particular are both older games. One is from like the late 90s, and one of them is and the other one is from much more recently. But I'm going to start off with the more recent one.
Okay.
So there's a series of games called the Zero Escape series.
My God, what's that, Kaiser?
Damn well what it is. So the Zero Escape series, it's a series of 3 games that were originally released for, I think the first one is actually a DS game. Second game was for the PS Vita and the 3DS. And then the third game was for the 3DS and PS Vita as well. And that one took a long time to come out because it wasn't even certain if the third game was going to come out because it was kind of meh popularity for them at the time. But they're on Steam now. I've had them for a while, and I finally have been giving them a replay.
So what are you doing them? So
the way the games work, they're heavily story-based, but they're puzzle games, escape room, essentially. So you, for whatever reason, you and 9 other people are trapped in a facility, no idea how you got there.
Is this the anime escape room one? It's like anime Saw.
The first one is much more anime. Yeah, it's kind of anime.
And I think the very first scene, it's like, if you choose the right choice in a 50-50 scenario, we just let you out and you win the game.
That's the third game.
Okay, I have seen a tiny bit of this, and I thought it was fucking awesome when I saw it, especially because I hate things like Saw. But if they're anime, it's funny.
It's somewhat better, yeah. Yeah, so the first game, I think it's called, it's a 999, like 9 rooms, 9 people, 9 hours, or something like that. Or 9 doors, 9... the 9 stand for something.
Well, the British Police Force?
Is that the number you have over there?
That's what you call 911. We call 999.
Okay. In Japan, I know it's I think it's like 110 or 011 or something like that.
In Australia, because on the other side of the world from us, it's 666. It's very bad. They often get the wrong person picking up.
It's just upside down. But yeah,
so devil turns up.
The one I've been playing through recently is the second game in the series, which is called Virtue's Last Reward. And
sounds very emo.
Yeah, they've. I imagine there's a bit of English that went into naming these games. They just thought it sounded cool, but the games are cool. So what they do, so the primary gameplay is solving puzzles and figuring out how to escape these rooms. But what they do that I found really fascinating, because the story bits are kind of in a visual novel format, with some like animated cutscenes in the later games, but in the early ones, because of the technology, it was more just like visual novel format, where there's a picture of someone talking and then a text box at the bottom of the screen. Second game added voice acting. Third game had like actual somewhat moving cutscenes. And the puzzles get progressively more complicated and interesting as you go through the first and the second and the third game. In the so one of the things that they did in all 3 games that I found really, really cool, an element of visual novels is you're making choices throughout the story and there'll be branching paths. They actually made that not only part of the gameplay, but part of the plot. So you going back and making other choices is actually part of the plot in these games. And I will preface before I go any further that, like, if I explain that statement, it's a bit of a spoiler, but they do it in a very interesting way.
Okay, do they have time travel mechanics?
Not necessarily.
Okay, I mean, I feel anyone who has listened to this point, be aware, spoilers are coming.
Yeah, this will spoil something about the series. It won't spoil the plot, but it will spoil like a major twist that shows up.
Was with them all along.
So it's not necessarily time travel, but there are certain people who have this sort of semi-psychic ability, and they explain it through like quantum physics. Like the whole idea of there being infinite universes, that certain people are more in touch with what they are doing in those other universes and where they are.
Okay, so parallel universes, some people can see through gateways or windows into them, and they see their friend being smashed up by a giant hammer, and they're like, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, it's not quite that... It's not quite that nice about it either. It's not like those things don't happen. It's those things do happen, but in different reality. One person is able to essentially overwrite themselves in another parallel universe and take them over and basically erase the them that is over there and take over their timeline. They go through it in pretty deep. They have like logs that you can actually read into, like all the lore as to how this functions in game. But point being, in the actual plot of the storyline, you are going back to those other plot points and living through it again.
I remember, because I watched a little bit of this series, and obviously this is all going to be from the same game, because I only watched a little bit of it, and it was one game. They were in like a room with a nuclear reactor or something, or maybe it was a bomb or something. It looked like a reactor. Yeah. And there was a chair there, which was very clearly had arms on it, and very clearly the arms were going to clasp your arms there. The arms of the chair were going to clasp your hands inside the chair, right?
That happens in the first game.
And there's like a box next to the chair at head height. And it's like, how fucking dumb. Like, it's got the old movie trope of everyone in the horror movie is stupid. But in the game, you think there's going to be a bit more like, can't I put a brick on the chair or something so the pressure plate goes off, but I'm not going to put my fucking arms on the arms of the fucking chair where there's clearly a trap?
There are pieces of that, but at the same time, in most of these games, if they don't actually play the game, if they don't solve the puzzles, they're just fucking killed. Yeah, they're dead.
Yeah, but they just needed to put something heavy on there, and they need to fucking sit on there and put their arms on it. There was nothing about putting their arms on the arms. That was from the first game, and there's a lot more contrived points like that. The second game gets better about it, and I think the third game gets even better. But in the second game, the one thing, and this is just I think really a cultural difference between Japan and the US, in my case, because like there's a guy who's about to screw everyone else over, and and he just gives his speech about how he's going to screw everyone else over, and I'm like, two of you are bigger than him. Fucking take his ass down. There's that, but I kind of get what they were going for. They're going for like a detective plot where you're solving the mystery and you're piecing. And they do a very good job of kind of feeding you little bits of information so that you'll like pick up on it and slowly begin to piece things together. Playing through the game, this is the second time I played through it. I think the last time was like 4 years ago when it first came out for the PS Vita. Right. So it's cool going back through it again because I know now like a lot of the end game plot, and so playing through it again, I'm noticing things I didn't notice my first time through. It's a very well written series, although the one thing that really gets under my skin, it's the anime trope of they won't explain something once when they can explain it 5 times in a row. In a flashbacks.
It's just like, oh, if you do this, you will die. You mean if we do this, we'll die? Yes, if you do this, you'll die. And if you do this, you'll die. You mean if we do this, we'll die? It's like, okay, I got it the first time you said it. Shut up.
So would you say that the puzzle aspect is better or worse than Dr. Clayton?
Who's Dr. Clayton?
Was it not Clayton? The brown-hatted professor dude on the DS who did the puzzle games.
I don't know that game.
I'll quickly look it up while
you'll have to look that up. Yeah. But anyway, so I'm almost done with the second game in the series on the PC now, and then I fully plan to play the third one.
Professor Layton.
Professor Layton. I still don't know it.
Okay. It was a very popular DS series for puzzles.
So the puzzles range in difficulty from point-and-click adventure game, where if you have all the pieces, you can solve it, to actually difficult things like word puzzles and math puzzles and visual puzzles. Like you'll get an image and you'll get a couple visual clues, and you have to work out the rest from there. And there's also a couple like sliding block puzzles, which those annoy the shit out of me. But there's a wide,
I got quite good at them.
There's a wide puzzle variety, and some of them are quite intellectually stimulating, let's say, and some are just fucking aggravating.
Yep.
There was one. Also, just one last thing about the puzzles in the second game. Each of them has two solutions. One that you need to progress the story, and one where you get extra information and details in a secret file. And that second one isn't necessary. It's just to give extra context and a reward for figuring out the more difficult version of the puzzle. Second thing, before I forget, there's 2 modes in the second game, easy and hard.
Yeah.
In easy, every time you screw up, your compatriots who are there with you will give you hints constantly. And I'm playing it on hard mode because that really annoyed me. I'm like, I want to figure it out myself.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, I hate when puzzle games give you hints and things.
Yeah.
What's your rating out of 10?
For that game?
Yep.
First game I'd probably put around like a 6 or so. It was pretty good for that kind of game. Second game, I'd definitely rate higher, probably around a 7 or an 8, somewhere in that range. Third game, I don't remember enough about it, and I'm not replaying it right now, but my guess is that it would be either on par or better than the second game from what I remember about it. Because my experience was the story got better with each game, and so did the puzzles. They got better with each game. So I was a fan.
I see. Nice. So you'd recommend one of the later ones?
Yeah, I'd highly recommend. You don't really need to play they're all connected. Like, and there are certain repeat characters, so you gain something from playing all 3 games in order.
Not necessary.
But it's not necessary. You can play any of them in any order. Doesn't matter. But the 2 that I would say are the best to play are the second and the third games, if you like those types of games. So
I see. Well, I too have been playing a sequel. This is the Ni no Kuni II. I can't remember what the subtitle is.
Ni no Kuni. So just for reference, I think Ni no Kuni means... So no Kuni means my country, or whatever Ni means. The country of Ni. Kuni means country in Japanese.
The Knights of Ni!
It's the Knights of Ni's country.
But yes, so I've been playing the second edition. No, that's the wrong word. I've been playing the second game. Yeah. And it is vastly, vastly different from the first one. So much so that I would not actually compare either of them as being the same kind of game in any way. For a start, they're set in 2 very different time periods?
Time periods.
Time periods. Thank you. Time commas. And the first one is all about you play as a little boy. There's a very emotional beginning to it. You get quite attached to the characters. There's a lot of storytelling to it. Certainly the first part of the game, you're probably spending more time in cutscenes than in gameplay, which normally I'd have a problem with, but Studio Ghibli did the artwork for this game, and so it looks fucking beautiful. Pardon my French.
It does have a very Ghibli look from what I've seen of it, yeah.
Also, it has some just excellent character creation. It has a little Welsh fairy, who is just so Welsh. It's brilliant. Yeah, I really like the main character of it, which, I mean, quite often main characters in games these days, they try and make them as bland and generic as possible so anyone can put themselves into their shoes. I wouldn't say Ollie is bland. And you certainly have a very strong emotional connection after what happens in the first 10 minutes of the game. And then it becomes kind of a game where you travel from kingdom to kingdom, solving people's problems and fighting these creatures, which, if anyone out there is familiar with Pokemon, it's a lot like Pokemon.
I feel like I do need to interject one thing. I jumped in one time when Blue was playing this, and he was streaming it on Discord.
This is Ni no Kuni II you're talking about.
Yes, yeah, you were playing through it, and I popped in, and unlike a lot of JRPGs where you're fighting with a sword or a bow or some spells, he pulls out
you do?
He does, but he also pulled out a Glock and shot a monster.
Yeah. That's number 2, though. We're going to get to that.
All right. Just a little bit of spice that's coming up.
So for the first game, yes, you go to these amazing settings, the castles that... The first place you go to is a castle that has, like, cat people, not in a weird way, alright? And they have a mouse problem, and you find out that the magical world and the real world have some links, like a lot of the people are in both worlds. And so, yes, he goes out and tries to cure people of... Basically, the Dark Lord, as it were, in the magical realm, has taken away parts of people's hearts. And so Ollie is going around taking the excess happiness or contentment or... what's the word when you have things in moderation? Restraint. Taking the excess amounts of that from people and giving it to the people who have had that taken away from them. So... literally ripping the parts of people's hearts out and sticking it at other people.
Yeah, it's a bit fucked up when you think about it. But go on.
Well, but it feels good apparently to the people he's ripping the hearts out of, and he is asking their permission first, so it's all right.
Okay.
And yes, it's like a Pokemon aspect where you collect a team of monsters. I think they're just called monsters in this. And then you fight other monsters to get through, and there are bosses and etc. A lot of cool character designs. The compendium, which is in it, it's called the Wizard's Notebook, I think, is probably the biggest in-game book I've ever seen. It is massive, and I feel like if you're the kind of person that sits down and reads text in games, this is like nirvana for you.
Yeah, that's kind of...
It's a real fucking book, pretty much.
So I'm the kind of person that, like... Mass Effect, one of my favorite things about the games was the Codex, where they explained all of the world's lore and, like, what this species does and how their culture was and what was the political shit that happened to them 1,000 years ago. I read all of it.
Exactly. And there's, like, a bunch of stories and things from that world as well. No Last Argonian Maids, but there you go. It's more of a children's story. Anyway, so I'm not going to get too more spoilers for that because that's not the game I'm talking about. Ni no Kuni II opens up and there is the president in his limousine driving towards...
Should clarify, the president of the United States, right?
President of the United States. Well, who else?
I mean, a lot of countries have presidents. Even France has a president.
Driving in a limousine towards a big built-up city that looks like Gotham. And suddenly there's a nuke goes off in the city ahead of him. There's a bright flash of white, and he wakes up outside of a young child's bedroom in a different world. That child is the king of, or the future king of Ding Dong Dell, which is a place from the first... what's the word? Game.
First game, yeah, I'm sorry.
And the king has just been assassinated by one of his advisors, and so you're trying to get this kid out of the castle. But fortunately, you're teleported with your trusty Glock, as Kaiser pointed out. So you are fighting predominantly with swords, and then your ranged weapon you pull out, the old Glock.
I love the idea of, like, you know, the person in Japan who was making this game, the studio who made the executive decision. Okay, the American president is going to be a character in this story. What does he need? A Glock. What?
Yeah, a Glock that doesn't run out of ammo.
That is
because
magical.
It's recharged with mana. So you escape the castle. And you do a bunch of other shenanigans, you get some other people on board. And the combat is very different, because in the first game, it's essentially you versus a maximum of 3 enemies, and you use your minions, or monsters, whatever, to fight them, or you use yourself with, like, casting spells, right? In this, there's up to, like, 10 enemies at once, and there's no minions, you don't have control of any monsters in this game. The battlefield is kind of different. way that abilities work is very different. The fact that you have... Because, okay, in the original one you had, like, text boxes, which you'd click on text box to do either a spell or a normal attack or a defense. In this one, it's much more... One button does one of these things, another does another, and it's more freeform, I guess. And you go into the big wide world in this, and you have chibi characters that represent you on the big wide world map, which is a bit weird.
Well, as you do, like a lot of Japanese games do that as shorthand. They're like, here's this cutesy token that represents you and your party.
Yeah. Anyway, the point I'm trying to get at is the entire gameplay is very different. About an hour in, you get a city building mechanic, which I fucking love city building mechanics in any game. Basically, you build a granary, let's say, you come back half an hour later and the granary's made you a certain amount of tax, which you can reinvest into the kingdom to make more stuff. It means you can have people making special arms and stuff for you. I love that shit. In fact, I left it on overnight a few times just so that I could accrue the wealth.
Yeah.
Min-maxing and all that. And then I kind of finished it all, but I was always like a step behind the armor and the gear and stuff that I was picking up from just fighting enemies.
Yeah, a lot of the way that the time that's how it goes. That being said, leaving the game on overnight, that used to be the the way to beat Fable 3, because you could invest in property, and you needed a lot of money at the end of that game. So you just like leave you'd buy a bunch of property, rent it out, crank the rent up, and then just turn the TV off, put a rubber band on the controller and leave. Exactly,
that's what I did for a couple of the Assassin's Creed 2 games.
Yeah,
because they had the same thing, and that's why I originally remember it from. Because when you had like the paintings and your original villa, and it was great. I love that. It's good, and I enjoyed it, which is kind of sad because you're not really doing anything, and but yeah, it didn't really help my actual gameplay. Sadly, my time would have been. I spent probably a third of my game time in that menu. But yeah, so you kind of go to each of the different cities, much like in the last one, but all the continents, while Ding Dong Dell is still the same city, the entire continent it's on has completely changed. And the continents around it have moved places. It's a bit odd.
The name of that city or that country makes me think of two things. One, pranks, and two, cows. Because one, pranks, because there's a game called Ding Dong Ditch where you go up, ring someone's doorbell, and then like run.
Oh, right.
It's a stupid prank the kids play, right? Don't do that. Even if it's funny, don't do that. The other one is because of the old rhyme, the farmer in the dell, and cows had bells on, so ding ding, and I think of a dell. My brain associates weird things, but cows and pranks, that's why I snorted earlier when you first said the name of it.
Well, ironically, the second city in the original game was ruled over by a cow person, but that wasn't Ding Dong Dell. Anyway, so... they also have some different cities. So Ding Dong Dell's the only one that stayed the same. They had a city of dogs, which I guess they included because in the last game they had a city of cats and they needed to make it fair for everyone.
Equality.
Ironically, you're going to love this, the city of dogs is Chinese-based and is all about gambling. Everything is done through gambling.
Oh my god.
Including like the courts of law and a whole bunch of things. So like 90% of the citizens are massively in debt.
We don't support stereotypes in this podcast. But that one's funny.
I mean, it's in the game. Well, I didn't put it there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you go to a city full of fish people. They were just ticking off the fucking animals, really, like mer people. And then a city of nerds, because they're also animals. Starting the rat and cat city, then dog city, then fish city, and then nerd city.
It's like some weird distortion of like the Mario of like, you know, what is it? Grass World, Ice World, Fire World, you know.
Oh yeah,
they're the themed worlds, but it's different. You've got like
ends on Volcano Bowser World.
Yeah, you've now got like, you know, Cat World, Dog World, Nerd World.
Yeah. Yeah, the game does seem a lot more. Well, for a start, all the mechanics are different. So I don't know if you can. I feel like if you change a game that much, you should give it a different title, and say that it's just a different game.
I know that I've played games that have done that before, where they've been a sequel, but they've fundamentally changed the way the game works. And I'm trying to think of the name of the game. It was something I want to say it was for the PlayStation 2, but I can't think of it off the top of my head, so I don't want to just like, if I think of it, I'll say it. But I know I've played series that do that before.
But yeah, they loosely reference a lot of the first game, but very loosely. And by the end of the game, so of all the characters, because you pick up a lot of characters for your party throughout the game, the only one I gave a shit about was the American president guy, because he basically wielded a gun and a sword. All the other characters, they had like spells. I never even bothered learning any spells in the entire game, and I still managed to complete the game. Because I just let I have two companions, let them. I gave one of them a hammer, one of them a spell book. Do your own shit. I'm going to be here with my upgraded Glock, the blunderbuss, whatever it was, the flintlock pistol, that was it. So much more powerful than the Glock. Yeah.
How the fuck does that work?
Fully automatic flintlock, I'll have you know.
That doesn't even make sense. It's not a flintlock then.
It's kind of mad how you start off with the Glock and then you go back to like Stone Age era gun, which is better than your Glock, and then get better again. By the end, you're using like plasma zapper from space or whatever. It's kind of dumb. I was really hoping that like a couple of hours into the game or something, I'd have like a machine pistol or just an MP5 or something.
Yeah,
that'd be fucking cool.
It would be.
No reason for it to be here. But it would line up.
There's see, you know what? You talking about this game. Oh, hold on. I'll ask you the same question before we move on.
Okay.
You know, how would you rate this game that you've been playing?
Well, I know it's not quite what you asked, but the first game I would rate 8.5 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
I rate it very highly. The story was excellent. It was quite a long game, but there you go.
JRPGs tend to be, yeah.
Yeah, this game I would give a 6 or a 6.5.
Really? Okay, so you're not as much of a fan of the second one.
Definitely not as much of a fan. The first one inspired me to keep to play and got me excited for the second one. The second one has not done me good. Also, the main character. This is something I haven't really mentioned. But, well, I just mentioned it. I was saying that the president was the coolest guy. This president was not the main character. The president is like the second character. The main character, who is the king's son or whatever, is a wet-ass little... No, I can't say that. Is just pathetic, and I couldn't stand like any of the other characters pretty much. Especially because you had to use the main character in the last fight, and I was like, no, I want to use ex-president. And the ending kind of sucked, but that's beside the point.
Yeah. You know what that actually reminds me of? There is something that I want to say, or another game I want to compare that to, because you reminded me of it. Before I go on to that, your opinion there about that game, it reminds me of... Have you seen the Video Game Donkey video where he talks about Dragon Quest?
No.
So he has
maybe I have, and I can't remember it because I've watched a lot of Donkey.
He has a similar opinion on that game, where he thinks the main character is just this, stupid nothing character who needs a haircut, And he's like, the real main character is this guy named Sylvando. He's the gayest man ever. And it's just like, it's him like dancing in front of the main character, and it just, I don't know, it's just, he describes how like every other character in the plot is like so much more interesting than the main guy, who is just a nothing person. And I think a lot of that happens with a lot of JRPGs in particular. The main character is just a nothing person.
I should also point out, just in full clarity of fairness, that I did end up playing the game for 90 hours and completing it, so...
Yeah.
It's not that bad. I talk a hard game, but it is... Well, it's fun. It's definitely worth how much... I don't think it costs that much. So it's definitely worth buying. I'm just saying, play the first one first, please.
There are plenty of games out there that, like, I've played only because I wanted to see where the story went, or because, like, I just thought that maybe it'll get better later, or I'm just like, I had nothing else to do. I'm
definitely invested in the lore of it.
Yeah. But the game that I was thinking of when you're talking about real world people brought into fantasy universes, there's a game called Eternal Sonata. Not a huge game. I think I still have it somewhere. I have it for the Xbox 360. Excellent game. And the concept, the main character, is the real world piano composer Francois Chopin.
Oh, yeah.
Who, by the way, writes some great music. Listen to those.
Oh, yeah.
The thing is, like, I didn't really know who the guy was until I played this video game, and then I went back and listened to some of his, like, piano...
Really? You've not heard of Chopin before?
I'd probably heard of him, but, like, I'm not a huge classical music person.
Fair enough.
But that actually made me start listening to some of his stuff, and it's really good. I'm a big fan of...
I bet Kevin was pissed at you.
He wasn't even... I think Kevin was like 6 when this game was out, so...
Yeah, but he definitely knows the composers.
He probably would now, yeah, but the thing is, I know them now.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's the main character of this RPG. He somehow finds himself in this fantasy world, and he goes through all of this stuff. And I'm not going to spoil the ending, because the ending is just this massive twist, and it actually has like a really just over-the-top ending. A bit of a tragedy, honestly, but just a really, really cool game with a very interesting concept. But the reason I bring it up is not only, like you were talking about how the president was one of your favorite characters, Chopin is the main character of this game, and he actually has a lot of personality, like, throughout the game. So it's fun. The gameplay's fun. It has like a semi-real-time battle mechanic where you've got people running around. Anyway, that's not the game I wanted to talk about. Game I wanted to talk about, the other game that I've been playing recently, has been the Megaman Legends series. And
yes. That's where you play as Mozart, right?
Yes. Mozart, few people know, his nickname was Megaman. Or Rockman, as they call him in Japanese. But yeah, no, these games came out for the PS1, and I actually originally got them for the N64. So the first game, Mega Man Legends, came out for the N64 as Mega Man 64. The second game only came out for the PlayStation 1 because, frankly, the N64 cartridges couldn't handle it. And it didn't sell that well on the N64. But I played it. So I played the first one for the N64, the second one for the PS1. And unlike all the other Mega Man games, where it's more of like a side-scrolling, like, shooter game where you get power-ups, you beat bosses, you get through levels...
I should say I've never played a Mega Man game.
Yeah, but you've seen what they look like.
Yeah.
And you've seen other games, like they have if you've seen like what Metroid looks like, right?
Yeah.
It's a very similar concept to what like a Mega Man, the normal Mega Man game looks like. This one, on the other hand, was kind of, they went in a different direction, and they did like a third-person like RPG kind of game, third-person action RPG. So, and they added like a whole new plot and lore and world. So all of the old plot was gone, other than the named characters. Mega Man, which in the Japanese version is known as Rockman, and the reason was his name was Rock, his partner's name was Roll.
Oh.
So they kept her name as...
Is that the dog?
No, the dog's name was called... I actually forget what the dog was called. Roll was the girl, though.
Okay. I don't remember a girl.
It's one of those things where it sounds more clever in Japanese because it's,
Yeah, it's in translation.
It's another, yeah, exactly. So that's why they changed him to Megaman, but they kept her name as Roll, and she's a main character in this. But they've established a whole new lore. Like, the world is, like, covered with water, and there's these dotted islands and continents of, like... So there's clearly an ancient civilization that existed before them that has, like, all this technology. These people who their job is to go down on digs into these sites and, like, pull up...
Strange ancient messages from a Thunberg.
Oh, are you talking... Yeah. God.
That was a slow burn.
Yeah, no, it just took a while. There's a lot of stuff I could say.
Anyway, on with the island story.
Yes. Anyway, yeah, so they go around to these different islands. The first game takes place entirely on one island. Mm-hmm. So they are on a dig, and their ship gets damaged, and they have to make like an emergency landing on an island, and they meet up with some of the local townsfolk, and they're like, oh yeah, we just wanted to make sure you're okay. Here, come talk to the mayor. We'll see what we can do to help you. And you can investigate ruins in the island, but there's also like pirates that are there too, who are there to steal like stuff from the ruins and basically rob the island. There's a bunch of like plot points that happen throughout it. The first game is very short.
Megaman's booty.
Yes. They want the same booty that Mega Man wants.
Oh, okay. They want Roll. Wait, Roll's not his sister or something, is it?
No. She's his love interest in the game.
Okay.
Although there's nothing like in modern games where anything actually happens. They're kids in the game. They're like teenagers.
Oh, okay. Whoops. Mind you, what's Crash Bandicoot then? How old is Crash Bandicoot? Because he had a love interest.
I have no idea how old he's supposed to be. I always assumed he was supposed to be like a 20-something.
Yeah, because I mean, his girlfriend in the original one is a bit...
He's an animal.
He wears trainers and shorts.
I know, but he's an... I feel like you can get away with stuff like that when you have like an anthropomorphized animal, which is why furries are everywhere. I made a weird connection. Don't worry about it. Yeah, so anyway, you solved the mystery in the first game, and at the end of the first game, it's revealed that there's actually... Mega Man is actually part of this... How do I put it? There was some massive cataclysm, and all humanity was wiped out and then reseeded by an advanced civilization, but there's still all of these advanced technologies, and if activated, it would just wipe out humanity again. And in the first game, they reveal that Mega Man has a connection to this advanced civilization, but they don't reveal everything. Then in the second game, they expanded. You no longer bound to one island. They have a lot more lore, a lot more plot. You find a lot more about how like Mega Man was found by the people who are caring for him now, and how like he met Roll and her grandfather, who's actually like this famous person who went on digs and did all this stuff.
I'm getting strange flashbacks to Rayman.
Rayman came out after this game, I think.
Oh, was it? Okay, where there were pirates that were stealing all the lums.
I mean, pirates exist in this, but that's not quite the same thing.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying it was the... Okay. Because you said there were pirates, so
there were pirates. But the pirates are just like kind of a side enemy to the main plot.
Right. Pirates used to be a lot more enemy.
Yeah, there are three basic factions in this game. There's like the people who are going on these digs. There are the pirates who are trying to rob the towns and stuff like that. And then there's all these... in the second game, a lot more so, there's these ancient... what am I trying to say? Like ancient computers, basically? Like these ancient systems that are there to basically wipe out humanity.
I thought you look like you...
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say, back in those days, there are three main kinds of enemies, and I was trying to think of them, and I was like, aliens, pirates, and Russians. They pretty much were the enemies for every game back in the day.
Well, in the 90s, yeah, but the Soviet Union had just fallen. People were still, the Russians, they were right there. I mean, it's not like too much has changed these days. Look what's going on.
No, I mean, yeah.
But basically, the second game expands that. There's like 5 or 6 different islands and continents you can go to. There's a bunch of different dungeons. Part of the thing is you have to go down there and collect, resources and stuff so you can find items and build better weapons and things to actually get to the final boss. And it all ends in the classic anime like existential crisis where you're fighting off this thing that could wipe out humanity as you know it.
Yep.
And neither. God damn it!
Sorry.
Neither game is that long. The first game, if you know what you're doing, can be beaten in like 8 hours.
Yeah, but I think that's a lot of old games. If you know what you're doing in those games, you can fly through them. But a lot of old games, you don't know what you're doing. There isn't the internet, and it's going to take you like 5 months to beat. You can see it behind me. That's it in my N64 right behind me. You guys who are listening to this can't see that, but behind me there's an N64 with my original cartridge in it, and that's what I played it through, replayed it on. I still have my old save on there, and it took me I want to say I had 28 hours on that save to beat it the first time. So. Okay. That's pretty quick for an old game.
I mean, my replay of it, I beat it in 14 hours. But again, that's because I beat it as a kid, so I knew what I was doing the second time through. But yeah, no, fun games, and there was supposed to be a third one because there was going to be more lore and there was going to be even more locations and all kinds of new stuff. It got canceled because. I guess Capcom just didn't think it was worth it to make the game. They did make a spin-off.
It's kind of a cult game.
Yeah, it didn't sell as well as they thought it would, so they canned the project, which is unfortunate. There's been a lot of Kickstarters and campaigns to try and get them to come on, make the game, but they haven't, which is unfortunate. But the first 2 games, very good and not terribly long, so definitely worth a try. The controls are a little weird for a modern audience because there didn't used to be 2 analog sticks back in the day. So especially
back
the movement.
In my day, we used the D-pad.
The movement and looking controls are a bit weird. But besides that, fun games.
Yeah.
And in keeping with what we've been doing for these other ones, rating wise.
Oh, yep.
First game, I think I would probably give a solid, like... I'm trying to think if I should rate it by... I'm not going to rate it by modern standards. I'm going to rate it by the standards of the day.
Okay.
So by the standards of the day, I'd say the first one is probably like a 6.5, right? It's
you should rate it by the standards of today, because if people want to go and play them, then they'll know...
Oh, standards of today then, I'm going to give the first game probably a 5.
5, okay.
Like, it was innovative for the time, it has an interesting story, and it's still, having played it today, there's only a few things that frustrated me about the gameplay, but I still had fun.
When did it come out?
1997 or 6, I want to say. It was late 90s.
So about 22 years old. No,
yeah.
25 years old. Wow, I'm stupid.
I think, so my version, the one for the N64, I think came out later, around 99. Like, they released it a little later because they had to convert it to the cartridge. So I played it later than that. But, I'd put it around there. There's some aggravating control things and stuff, but the story's still good, and it's an interesting and unique plot, at least, again, for the time. The second one, I'd rate higher. If I'm rating it by modern standards as well, I'd put that around like a 6.57. Because there's more areas, there's more varied enemies, the boss battles are fun, they've cleaned up the controls, you can play it with an analog stick, and there is...
It's a lot more optimized.
Yeah, it's a lot more optimized, the gameplay's more fun, the plot's more in-depth, and there's more varied areas and enemies. So.
Mm-hmm. And the last one? Or was there only 2?
There's only 2, they never released the third one. They apparently worked on it for a while, but never actually finished it.
I see. Yeah. That's the games we've been playing the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, and so next, we're going to be ending this off, but next we've got a couple things to talk about in segment 3. I understand you've watched the new Batman movie that's been coming out.
I have.
So we'll be talking about that in a little bit, but this is going to be the end of segment 1 of the TMCJ podcast. Thank you all for listening, and you will hear us again momentarily for segment 3. Welcome back to the TMCJ podcast. We are on segment 3, our wildcard segment, and this week we're just going to be talking about some more stuff. First segment we talked... Batman. Yes, Batman. First segment we talked about, the video games we've been playing this week, and now we're just going to be chatting about some stuff that we've watched this week. Blue has been to see the new Batman movie, which I didn't even realize there was a new Batman movie until I was told about it.
Yes, it's a Batman movie with the Batman being played by your favorite sparkly vampire from Twilight.
You know what? And I will say this. I'll say the same thing that I said when you informed me that was what those trailers were for. I had been seeing these trailers as ads on YouTube or maybe it was on Amazon or something like that. And I didn't realize it was for Batman because I obviously skipped them the moment I was able to skip them.
Yeah.
And I saw Robert Patterson come out, say some flirty things to a random person, clearly in a school setting. I'm like, are they doing a Twilight sequel or? And I never thought anything more about it until.
I never remember it being a school setting.
School setting, yeah.
All takes place at night, so I don't know where the school scene happened.
Maybe he's in something else too.
Huh. All the times he hasn't got his mask on, he's got like the black panda eye patches from when he's just taken off the just to look extra emo, like he's bleeding black blood from his eyes.
Okay, maybe...
I'm sure it gets many women wet.
Maybe he's in another series that I also saw ads for, and I'm getting them mixed up. But go ahead, it's your show, talk.
For all I mock him, he did actually make a pretty good Batman. And, I mean, there's a lot of bad Batmans out there.
I should clarify that, despite Twilight, and to be fair, I've watched all the Twilight movies, because why not? He actually was one of the better things about those movies because he is actually a decent actor, despite the fact the script was shit. He was a decent actor.
Yeah, every time in the Batman film where he said, I'm used to being a creature of the night or something like that, I felt like they were harking back to the Twilight reference.
Yeah.
It was a bit funny. Whenever they're like, I spent all my life in the dark because I'm a vampire. Ah!
He was in Harry Potter too.
He was. He was one of the prefects.
Yeah, he was one of the main characters in the 4th movie. Third or the 4th, whatever the one where they have to go for that big cup in the maze.
Yeah, Goblet of Fire.
Goblet of Fire. He was in that one.
But yeah, they actually had particularly some of the scenes where I got real Judge Dredd themes. It felt like pretty heavy. They emphasise the sound of his slow walk being like heavy boots and stuff like that. And I did get kind of a sense of it was a bit badass at some points.
Yeah, going for the intimidation kind of perspective.
Yeah, the villains lacked a bit. The actual main villain was pretty cool. I didn't mind him so much. He is quite a famous actor. He was the, in The Big Short.
Yep.
The guy who had the squiggly eye. And listened to rock music and smash the drums.
Oh, yeah, him. What, Christian Bale?
Is that his name? Okay.
Well, he's the one that played Batman in the recent Batman movies.
Oh. I think he played the Riddler, who is the villain in this Batman.
That's pretty cool. I was gonna ask which Batman villain they went with, but if it's the one that it's the one I'm thinking of, the guy that listened to crazy rock and was in sandals and barefoot in his office, yeah, he's the guy who played Batman in the Dark Knight and that Batman series.
I don't know how I didn't draw that connection, but anyway,
that's a really cool
about him being the Riddler.
I could see him being the Riddler.
He looked very young in this film, very young. But makeup artists these days, very good at their jobs. But yes, the Riddler is like this guy wearing basically a gimp mask. He's not the guy wearing the old-fashioned thief's mask and the green bowler hat with the green suit and the question marks. Nah,
as much as that would have been awesome to see.
He's more like a really creepy gimp who... It's very cool, I will say. A lot of the puzzles, the Riddler-esque puzzles, are kind of a bit too vague for anyone to have actually worked out in advance, I would say. Because a lot of it was like, here's a massive sheet of symbols and a few letters, so Batman, work it out. And it's not something that the audience ever had a chance to try and get ahead by trying to decipher it, I don't feel like, which would have been a nice touch, I think.
Our live studio audience has provided a list of the cast, and it is not him.
Oh, is it not him?
No. It's a guy called Paul Dano.
Okay. Well, they look they have very similar...
They do have a very similar face structure. Yeah, I could see the confusion. But so, just to clarify, it is not Christian Bale. It was Paul Dano.
And yeah, the Batmobile, bit lame. Not gonna lie, not as bad as the Dark Knight Batmobile, because that was just a kind of shitty tank. They did actually return it to being a car, but it was so... it's clear they're trying to go back to the basics a little bit with the car style, which was good, but at the same time, the amount of strength this car had... I mean, this car literally, I think, went through a concrete block at one point and didn't slow down. And
yeah, and
it's also got a massive engine, which is cool, but it's also incredibly exposed because it's just hanging out the back of the car.
A couple things to think about those things. Like, there's a quote from a series that I watched back in the day, and this is like, a sci-fi series, but they're talking about essentially using these very high-speed combat mechs, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's relevant to this because one of the pilots realizes that, this thing is like, it's very powerful, but it has one weakness. The pilot is a human being. So when you're talking about like a big ass car, yeah, you could make a car that had the right kind of materials and stuff like that could pound through a brick wall. The problem is there's a human driving it, and the impact is going to splatter him against the front of the car unless he's got a great cardiovascular system, which Batman probably does, and B, is restrained very well, in a harness of some kind.
They very much go for the Batman is kind of a superhero in a suit as opposed to a normal dude in a superhero suit, because, don't get me wrong, bulletproof vests are a wonderful thing, but there's a lot of things a bulletproof vest won't be able to stop, and pretty much every kind of gun you can think of has shot Batman in this film.
Well, and one thing a lot of people don't realize, especially when you're talking about like Kevlar, it's rare that it'll be able to stop multiple shots. Because, and I'm not talking about like all bulletproof vests, but most of the ones that are like standard fare, they can stop like a couple pieces of small rounds fire or slow them down. But after that, like, the integrity is compromised, and so another bullet is going to be able to punch through that.
There was a scene quite close to the end where he gets lit up by a submachine gun about a meter away. And the bullets all hit his torso, of course, where all the armor is, and no bullets at any point ever aim for his head or just any other part of his body. And then, after he deals with that person, there's an enemy on the floor, right? Picture it. Close your eyes.
Yep.
Imagine. Enemy is on the floor. They have a double-barreled shotgun. Batman is standing right over them. Alright? Now, don't take this the wrong way. It's not good. Doesn't drop his pants or something, right? That's not this kind of film.
Batman teabags the shotgun.
He fires the double-barreled shotgun at Batman's sternum when there is, like, literally 2 or 3 inches from his, like, the barrel to Batman. From a, like, long-barreled shotgun.
To be fair, knowing what I know, that is more realistic than the submachine gun. Because so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. A shotgun has a whole lot of force, but it fires tiny pellets. So those can be stopped more. Through. No. They actually don't have a whole lot of penetrating power. Unless you're talking about so there's
Fletcher rounds. Okay, we would have gone.
There are three main types of shot. You have bird shot, which is tiny little balls and tons of them. Those things don't punch through anything, which is why you use them on birds. There's buckshot, which is made to take down deer. It's bigger balls, but they're still not going to punch through much unless, but unprotected flesh. And then there's slugs.
Yeah.
A slug will knock through a fucking brick wall.
Yeah.
And it's just a giant marble made of lead. If they were firing buckshot or birdshot, then maybe you could birdshot, no problem. Buckshot, it probably wouldn't penetrate the Kevlar, even at that range. But there would have been enough. But there would have been enough force to knock him on his ass. That's all I'm going to say.
They had sniper rifles, so I'm going to assume that they had pretty high level gear.
To be honest, if they were using a shotgun in that kind of situation, they probably would be firing slugs. But the submachine. The reason I'm saying the submachine gun is the one that I doubt the most is because a submachine gun typically fires 9mm ammunition, like pistol ammunition. And I was already saying, Kevlar is going to be compromised after the first shot or two. So if you're firing 10 shots in there, at least the latter 5 shots are going into him. But sorry, go on.
I mean, just the very fact that you're obviously wearing a lot of body armor, being able to do fucking karate and all that shit, which he does throughout the film, he would have to be, don't get me wrong, peak performance male.
I mean, credibility or credit to the Zack Snyder Batman movies. If you remember when he's talking to Lucius Fox in those movies, there's the whole thing about him I want to be a little bit more mobile because he's got all this armor, but and Lucius, well, you're going to trade off. You might actually have to worry about getting shot or getting stabbed now, but you'll be more mobile, but you'll be more vulnerable.
But yeah, so the Batmobile was meh. The body armor was just ridiculous. At one point, he's escaping from cops, alright? He gets right to the top of this building, which for some reason the police station is a skyrise. Don't know. He jumps off the top of the skyrise.
The police cannot afford a skyrise in America.
Right. That's what I was... He jumps off the top of it. He activates his wingsuit, and he's aiming for a bridge because style points, I guess. And there's a bus. So there's 2 sides to the skyrise. There's the empty side, and there's the side that the bus is going under. So he chooses the side that the bus is going under. And then, as he's coming down, he's gonna slide between the bus and the roof of the the bridge going over, right?
Yeah.
That's when he chooses to use his parachute to slow his fall. So the parachute extends. Less than a second later, it wraps up onto the overpass, and Batman swings up and face plants the bottom of the bridge. It's what
I
were
was
you thinking?
I was going to say maybe they were going for obviously everything up until now. You can suspend your disbelief. You can imagine that this is how bullets work, but I was thinking they're going for style over substance.
Oh yeah,
but now that's not even style.
It's actually fucking funny. The person next to me, I'd gone to the cinema with, just burst out laughing. It was just weird. The villains, like I said, the Riddler, real good. There's some really fucked up scenes in it.
The Riddler, I think, is a Batman villain. I'm kind of sad the Riddler didn't show up in some of the other...
yeah, he's not in many of them. They always go with Penguin or the Joker, generally.
Yeah, I mean, the Joker's the classic one. I do think he's one of the better ones out there. But
so the Penguin is there, and this is back in the day when the Penguin is not one of the head crime syndicate families, I guess. He runs the Iceberg Lounge. He's got a fucked up face. He basically caters to the higher class of criminal. They didn't do the pearls, which I know it's an intricate part of Batman lore. Do you know what I mean by the pearls?
I don't actually.
So basically, in every Batman film, they always have a recollection of Bruce's parents dying.
Oh, you're talking about the pearls that his mother had on. Yeah, okay, yes. I do know what you're talking about then.
Yeah, they didn't do that, which thank fuck, because honestly, it's one of those tropes which it's such a boring detail. I don't care.
It is. It's one of those things that if there's, I don't know, a waltz always has a certain sort of thing that it always has. There's something that always exists when you have it's a trope and it's a tradition, but I can understand wanting to break away and try something different. Sorry, go on.
Well, they just didn't do a flashback, which I was very thankful for, because we all know the fucking story. Right?
That's a good point. Yeah, at this point, everyone knows Batman.
Yeah, and the Riddler, so is basically wiping out certain significant figures from around the city who are all corrupt, right? So technically, he's kind of like Batman, except he's killing the people.
Yeah.
So he's getting all the head of the DA and the head of the police and all these other things, and he's torturing them and then killing them. And then he sends a package to Bruce Wayne. And Batman's like, oh shit, he knows that it's me. And Alfred opens the package, has an oh fuck moment, throws it across the room, it explodes. And there's a card that says, to Batman, see you in hell.
Who played Alfred, out of curiosity?
Or
was it like a kind of a traditional Alfred character? Was it
Alfred? They played Alfred well.
Okay.
I'd say.
Because I think he's always, in a lot of Batman shows, he's kind of an underappreciated gem.
He is, yeah. I think there's a lot of good Alfreds out there.
Yeah.
And so, Batman's like, okay, fuck, he just tried to assassinate me. But then they catch the Riddler on the next assassination, and they send him to Arkham. And so Batman goes over to Arkham to confront him. And the Riddler's just talking to him and saying all these things about Bruce Wayne and the Batman. And Batman's just looking like a depressed fucking child that's just been told off because obviously this guy's worked out that he's Bruce Wayne. And then the Riddler says something and Batman's like, hang on a second. He has no fucking clue that Bruce Wayne is Batman. And Riddler actually thinks that Batman has been working with the Riddler all this time. It's a really interesting twist. And then the Batman's like, in a kind of weird and striking back out of childishness way, is like, you're insane, and fuck you, Riddler, and you're stupid, and you're an idiot, and the Riddler's like, what the fuck, dude? Fuck you can burn in hell with them, the rich guys. But it's really interesting, because the Riddler thought he was on his side. Anyway, go on.
Well, two things. I was going to say that seemed like a really obvious. It's great. It's funny that the greatest detective in the world didn't figure this out. I'm like, the moment the package shows up at Bruce Wayne's house, my first thought was like, oh, he just thinks Bruce Wayne's another corrupt kleptocrat, right? It's weird that he jumped to that conclusion. And B, I think that is one of the more annoying tropes in modern movies and TV. It's something I'm seeing more and more, is that the main character throws a temper tantrum like that. Like, I feel like it doesn't always have to be the main character, but it does happen more and more, I find, where they're trying, the writers are trying to do a tense scene of some kind, and it just comes off as a petulant child, throwing a tantrum.
But yeah, it turned out when the card said "see you in hell," he didn't mean literally see you in death. He meant Arkham Asylum. He knew he was going to Arkham Asylum.
Yeah, you'd
So
see
he
him
was saying,
there.
I'll meet you there. And yeah, lots of fucked up scenes, and that's when I don't know, kind of like the Riddler basically uses TikTok to get his followers on side, kind of thing. It's fucking weird, but I guess they're trying to make it modern and hip.
Okay.
And yeah, it was all like, oh, we're tired of people lying to us, and there was some genuinely like a human-esque side to him, especially because he had like, you know, those thick nerd glasses, and he was essentially a little kid.
Hold up, Blue.
Go on.
All right. It only lasted for like a few seconds there, but you went pixely and jittery as fuck. I don't doubt that went well in the recording, but
Okay.
can you just repeat like the last like 10 seconds of what you said for my sake, so for the recording?
So I think they did a good job portraying the Riddler because they made him quite humanist. They were saying, you know, there's all these people in power who they could be lying, they could be telling the truth. You have no idea, and you have no control over it. And also because he looked kind of like a kid under a mask, that it was like you almost kind of feel a little bit bad. I mean, he still looks pretty old, but yeah, he just seems like a guy who's really been shat on all of his life. And then, right at the end, they did the classic we want more money trick of, oh, and who's sharing the cell next to the Riddler?
There might be a sequel.
A guy that talks about clowns. Who could that be?
Joker. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got that. I mean, with Batman, I get the fact that they're trying to like put together a franchise. All these movies now, like sequels, are how they're making money. Like they're like, this has to be a franchise.
Yeah. Well, something I said when we left the theatre was that they always leave the Joker for the second film, because if the first film flops, they're like, whatever, the Joker's next, so people are going to come back to watch it anyway.
Yeah. And to be fair, like Dark Knight, that was a great Joker.
It was.
That was one of the best Jokers out there.
In fact, apart from the third Dark Knight, I definitely say it's better than the third Dark Knight film.
Yeah, I might actually. I feel like this is a movie like based on what you're talking about. It might be something that I check out at some point, maybe down the road when it comes for, you know, on Amazon or Netflix, or I can get it.
I will say it's almost 3 hours long.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm fine watching a long movie if it's good. I love Troy, the director's cut version of it, which is like 2 hours and 40 minutes long. Great movie, and I enjoy every second of it. And you know, I watched all the extended cuts of Lord of the Rings movies, also very good. But each movie is like 3 or 4 hours long. Okay, yeah. But it's interesting. Robert Patterson is not somebody that I ever would have pictured as Batman, but we'll see how it goes.
Good job of it, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one person who I thought could do a good Batman and ended up being a crap Batman was Ben Affleck. I didn't like in the new DC universe, right? Like he was in the Justice League one. He was in Batman versus Superman. Like, I don't know. I thought he was a crap Batman.
I don't see David Tennant as the Batman. Scottish Batman.
He can't cover up his accent, though. He has to actually be a Scottish Batman.
Oh, yeah. I think that would be hilarious and awesome.
Oh, God. All right, well, continuing with the theme, you know, rate it.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well, first of all, we're going to work out a scale. So I'm going to say the Joker Dark Knight was like a 9.
Yeah, I'd be on board with that.
I think the Bane Dark Knight, that's the third installment in the series.
Yep.
7?
Yeah, that's about what I'd put. I might go a little lower, but about that.
Yeah, I was thinking 6.5. So. So I'm going to say, by that logic, that this is an 8.
Okay. So actually a bit of an endorsement for it then. Because I mean, the Dark Knight is it's one of the better superhero movies that I've seen. Like one of the best it's flat out one of the best superhero movies I've seen. But beyond that, it's just a good movie. Okay, so I may have to check this out then. Is it called anything in particular, or is it just called Batman?
I don't know. I think it's just called Batman. One thing that kind of wound me up was
sorry. Again, our studio audience. It's called The Batman.
Well, okay. Not it's called Not Those Other Batmen.
Not Your Father's Batman.
Literally, like the next day. Bear in mind, we watched it on the second day of release, right? And the theater was almost empty. So I'm guessing other people maybe didn't like it. But the next day, after I watched it, I was getting like Lego ads for the car. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Lego versions of the new Batmobile.
Of the Batmobile, yeah.
And it was kind of like, ouch. That doesn't feel good.
God. Yeah,
Speaking of Lego.
I mean, I've still got that Lego set. That's something I got to build it. That was something that happened this week. I had an urge to build a Lego set because I realized I hadn't in like a year or so, and so now I have a Lego TIE Fighter that I plan to put together.
Yes. He needs to renew his engineering license, so what they do is they send you a box of Lego.
A box of Legos and have you make something.
Yeah.
Honestly, I would. God, if I could get engineering certificates by actually building something instead of taking stupid fucking quizzes, I would do it a lot more often.
Fair.
Most of my certifications that I have to take, it's like a massive multiple choice question quiz in a room, and it's boring as hell. That's not what engineering is about. You got to build shit.
Not in a room. I'm gonna be out on they set you up on a skyscraper, no walls, and they just have pieces of paper on a wooden desk. You have to keep all of them on the table while writing your notes.
Oh my god. All right. Well, you know what? So I have been watching a couple things this week too. In fact, and I think I may have talked a little bit about this anime on the podcast before, but it's been at least a year. So the anime is Yu Yu Hakusho. And it is...
I'm just saying, this is the same for any other people, but if I hear any Japanese name, it just registers as insert Japanese title here, and I have no idea which one it is.
The main character's name is Yusuke Urameshi, which, again, great, random Japanese name. But, all right. So, the plot of this anime, main character, Yusuke, dies in the first 10 seconds of the anime.
Yeah, one of these.
He gets hit by a car.
Yeah.
So, actually, it's more like the first 10 minutes. So the plot is that, but this is the different thing though, because like the classic anime protagonist is normally like a decent guy, or he's like I've
seen 4 different animes where the main character gets hit by a car or a bus in the first 5 minutes, and they're all assholes that just want women and money.
All right, well that's not this guy.
Okay.
So this guy is a random like 14-year-old like high school student who is a punk, a dropout, has only one friend, constantly gets into street fights, but has this one moment where he like saves this little kid. You're saying this like there's a lot of animes like this out there. I can't think of a single other one that actually meets these criteria.
ReZero.
I don't think I've seen that one.
Okay. Go.
Anyway, the reason that I bring this up hasn't like it's still one of my favorites is because all throughout the series the main character never grows from that. Like he kind of like gets along with a few other people, but for the entire duration of the series the main character is an absolute dumbass. Like he stumbles his way through everything, and every time like the person is like trying to give him, like, eventually he gets, like, sorry, I'm going way out of order. He gets killed. He gets an ordeal from the spiritual world to, like, win his life back if he can accomplish a task. He ends up fucking that up horribly. And, sorry, you're raising your hand. Do you have something to say to the class?
Does he get an attractive woman to go around with him, helping him on his journey?
Yes.
All right, continue.
She hates him.
I've never seen this anime before. I'm just saying tropes of this kind of anime.
Okay, that's fair. To be fair, this anime may have generated those tropes because this anime came out in the early 90s. So it's quite an old one. Anyway, so him and he does eventually come back to life despite the fact that he fucks up everything. In terms of, like, he screws up his entire task, but it just ends up working out in his favor because of contrived coincidence. The reason I bring this up is one of the only animes from this era that I would recommend watching the English dub of, because the Japanese sub takes things a lot more seriously, whereas the English dub, you can clearly tell that they were having a lot more fun with it. And they were really laying into the fact that the main characters were absolute dumbasses. Like, there's a scene where, first of all, the best character in the entire anime is a guy named Kuwabara. Guy's a bit of an idiot, like everyone else in this anime. And he's also the main rival for the main character from, like, his high school. And just kind of begrudgingly becomes a part of everything. There is a scene where he is going into a battle where he's almost surely going to lose. And his exact line is, "A mulberry is a tree, Kuwabara..." No, sorry. Yeah, "A mulberry is a tree, Kuwabara is a man." And then he just gets his ass kicked. But...
See. I just looked up images of it, and it looks very Dragon Ball era.
It's from that era, yeah. It's from that same era of anime. I watched the whole thing from beginning to end, and it definitely goes through a bit of a power scale craziness at the end.
Right.
But they don't fall into the trap of a lot of anime where they kind of keep it going and try to, keep it, escalating further and further and further. They just hit an end point, and they're like, you know what? Let's wrap up the story.
Yeah.
And then there's a bit of a really heartwarming, everyone lives happily ever after kind of ending. But it's not, but they do it in a way that doesn't seem to be a cliche.
Okay.
But there are quite a few great one-liners in the English dub of it. Anyway, that's what I've been doing. I didn't really have anything to say about it too much. Just that it's good, it's a classic, and watch it in English. It's fucking hilarious.
To be fair, it sounds like an older version of that kind of anime does appeal to me more, because in the more modern ones, I don't know how overtly sexualized this one is, but...
No, there's none of that.
Okay, well, great, because all of the modern ones feel very sexualized.
There is...
Go on.
I will say right off so when you said an attractive support character, yes, there is, but that's not her...
Their defining quality.
Exactly. In fact, the main character doesn't even, give her the time of day. So from the very beginning, the main character has one love interest, and it's never in question, and it's his childhood friend, and she's not overtly sexualized at all. Every character, there's no romantic subplots.
Okay. So... Sorry, go on.
It's mostly a kind of coming of age. This main character, his whole life, he grows up, he has a single mother who's an alcoholic, and him finding this job, becoming this spirit detective and hunting demons and stuff like that, that's him finally finding responsibility. He finds father figures and all of the wrong people, most of the enemies that he fights throughout it. It actually has a fairly complicated story under the veneer of this kind of classic anime trope with some other stuff happening. But go on. What were you gonna...
So I was just going to list a few of the examples. So ReZero, which I talked about, is the one that has Rin and Ren in it. or Rim and Rem. I can't remember.
I
The two
know.
maids. One has blue hair. One has red or pink hair. They were a massive internet sensation for a while because everyone found them incredibly attractive.
Yeah, I don't know this one. I looked it up to be sure, but I don't know this one.
Yep, so that's one where the person comes to the world and every time he dies, he's like Groundhog Day, he just wakes up again.
Yeah, it's not that.
No, but from your description, I was feeling similar themes. The other two, there was one where, someone dies, they are given one wish and they're introduced into a new world, and they wish that the goddess that's speaking to them was there with them. So she's dragged along, she's stupid, but attractive.
Yeah, it's...
and that's kind of how that goes. And then finally there's one where, a different anime where literally the same fucking thing happens, where they get a goddess on their side, and they're doing an adventuring party. And,
I should clarify that he dies, and the whole reason he doesn't immediately go to the spirit world, right, is because of a clerical error. Like, he's not the chosen one or any stupid shit like that. Literally, the pilot of the River Styx comes by and is like, yeah, we didn't expect you to die. And he's like, well, what do you mean? You expected me to let this little kid die in front of a car? And they're like, no, actually, we expected you not to save the kid at all. You seemed like an asshole. And he's like, what kind of piece of shit do you think I am? And he's like, well, I wasn't going to tell you this because, I thought that it would make you even more angry. It's like, that kid actually would have lived if you hadn't have jumped out in front of the car. He would have been fine. It's like, so, by the way, your death was a total waste. And so, like, it's not like he's the chosen one or anything like that. And it's not like he gets reincarnated over and over. It's that...
That was kind of the same thing with at least one of them. I remember that being the thing where, like, the person wasn't actually going to die that they jumped out in front of the thing for.
Yeah. If it's something that came out around the time of ReZero, then it would have been... Like, this one would have been the precursor to that.
This definitely looks like the precursor to all of them.
Do you have...
No, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
It looks different, which is good.
It came out in... I want to say it was in the early 90s. And I want to say it finished up in the mid-90s. Because it's not super long. It's 112 episodes.
Yeah. But also, what I've been watching more recently, but it's kind of quite a bit different, I'd say, is That Time I Was Reincarnated as a Slime.
I've heard of this one. I've never seen it.
Scott was big on it. I've watched a few episodes of it, and it is quite funny. It follows kind of similar trend, but it's less tropey. And it's just a funny anime watch. Where this literal slime monster that has the ability to absorb any attack, so of course they very quickly become vastly overpowered, but they're still a slime.
That reminds me of... So last thing I'll talk about before we end off the podcast.
Yeah, sorry.
One of my friends, he had to go to Japan quite a bit for work because his company did a bit of work with like Mitsubishi and like some other random Japanese companies.
Nice.
He picked up a manga while he was there for me. It's entirely in Japanese, so I can't read a damn word of it.
Yeah.
But the plot of the manga, it's following like a D&D style adventuring party. But it doesn't follow any of the stuff they do when they're actually fighting monsters or questing. The entire book is when they're camping. So when they set up their campfire and like cook dinner and chat with each other around the fire, and that is the whole story. It's just their downtime. It's the downtime of the adventurers. Like, I'm
sure you're aware of when you're playing a D&D campaign for real, the boringest part is the combat. Because, people can die in the combat. But other than that, unless you've got some really creative players, the combat's going to be pretty much, I use this spell, I roll to hit, I roll for damage, next turn.
You've never played a game with me when I'm one of the players. The kind of crazy shenanigans I think up in combat give Jesse nightmares.
Yeah, and I love that when a player does it, and they do occasionally... So I had a player that threw... I think I've said this on a very old podcast, but threw a jar of oil at an enemy lit a match and then just ran at the enemy. And I was like, fuck yeah, this is a stupid idea, but I love it.
Let me give you an example of one of the things I did. So we found a corpse of a Tyrannosaurus in the forest. And there was something glowing from a hole in its stomach.
Oh, yeah, I remember this.
And I'm like, my character's immune to disease. And everyone's like, oh, go in there and get it. And so
acid counts as disease, though.
I also had... I could cast a spell that made me immune to poison as well. Luckily, there was no acid. There was no acid.
Stomach?
There was no... It was dead. Jesse didn't think of it. Don't give him ideas. Anyway, so, like... I crawled inside this thing, and of course, when I got inside of it, it immediately got up because it was a zombie dinosaur and started attacking the party. And Jesse was, he's like, okay, make this kind of a check to see if you fall over. I'm like, what if I don't want to stop myself from falling over? Like, and I was like, I just want to curl up into a pinball and let myself ping around inside this thing, like, as it attacks my teammates. And it worked out. So the way he did it was, like, I could make attacks, but every time I hit a wall, I would take equal damage to the thing when I slammed into it. So I was taking fall damage inside the dinosaur. And I ended up doing the majority of... What?
Full damage is what you went with? How big was this fucking creature?
It was he had to come up with the mechanics on the fly. As a you're a DM, I'm a DM. You kind of have to make up some rules as you go.
Yeah.
But it ended up with me like using a divine smite to blow up the top of this thing. As my teammates ran around outside of it trying to keep it going. I love creative stuff like that. But you're right, a lot of the more creative stuff happens in the conversations rather than the combat. The
absolute worst thing I hate more than anything else is people that have magic missile. Because you don't even need to ask them to roll to hit, because it's an automatic hit. Let me talk. I want to hit you, and you. Here's the damage. Go next.
All right, here's a hot take. I think magic missile is shit. I think it's a piece of shit. It doesn't...
Efficiency-wise.
Yeah, exactly. Granted, it's a guaranteed hit, so it's great against things that have like high evasion or high AC, but in most cases...
don't need to be next to each other. They could be anywhere around you.
In most cases, I find it crap. Like, I find that they're... But again, I don't play spellcasters. Maybe for a spellcaster, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. It's like barbarians could do crazy high damage, yeah, but they can basically only do it to one person at a time.
The characters
you get at like level 2.
The characters I've played the most in D&D is Paladins. Paladin is my go-to. It's just enough spellcasting, but I still get to hit shit.
Yeah, if I were to actually join that, because my party is almost into... We've gone wildly off track. Maybe we should...
Maybe we should stop. We've kind of translationed just talking about D&D. I don't know, but sometimes these are the more fun conversations to have on this.
I know, but we will be here for another hour.
You're right. Yeah, the podcast is already at an hour and a half. I don't want to go too much further. Well, next time maybe we'll just tell some more D&D stories or something. But in the meantime... this is going to be the end of episode 81 of the TMCJ podcast. Thank you all for listening, and you will hear us again in 2 weeks for episode 82.
Batman!